My name is Alex, and I need to tell you about the biggest secret I ever kept. It's about my roommate Daniel, and how everything changed between us one rainy November night. But to understand that night, you need to know how we got there. I met Daniel 3 years ago when we were both starting graduate school at Boston University. I was studying architecture, and he was in the creative writing program. We met at a campus housing fair, both of us desperately searching for affordable rent in one of America's most expensive cities. We were standing in front of the same bulletin board, reaching for the same flyer about a 2-bedroom apartment in Alston. Our hands touched. I remember that moment so clearly. His fingers were warm, and when I looked up, I saw these incredible hazel eyes looking back at me with surprise and amusement. He had dark curly hair that fell across his forehead, and when he smiled, dimples appeared in his cheeks. "Well, this is awkward," he said, laughing. "I guess we both want the same place. Maybe we could look at it together?" I suggested, my heart racing in a way I didn't want to examine too closely. Split it between us. That's how it started. We viewed the apartment that same afternoon. It was a 3rd-floor walk-up with creaky wooden floors, a tiny kitchen, and windows that looked out over the tree-lined street. It wasn't much, but it felt like home immediately. We moved in 2 weeks later. Living with Daniel was easy in ways I never expected. He was naturally neat, but not obsessive about it. He loved cooking elaborate meals on Sunday evenings and always made enough for both of us. He had this habit of leaving little sticky notes around the apartment with encouraging messages or terrible puns that made me groan and smile at the same time. But here's what I was hiding. I was completely, hopelessly in love with him. I knew I was gay. I'd known since high school, and I'd been out to my family and close friends for years. But Daniel talked about his ex-girlfriend sometimes, the one who'd broken his heart senior year of college. He mentioned women he found attractive. He seemed thoroughly, completely straight, so I buried my feelings. I told myself I was lucky just to have him as a friend, as a roommate, as this constant presence in my life. I went on dates with other guys, though none of them ever seemed to work out. How could they, when I was comparing everyone to Daniel? The worst part was the little moments of physical closeness that felt like torture and heaven at the same time. When we'd watch movies on our worn-out couch and he'd fall asleep with his head on my shoulder, when he'd ruffle my hair in the morning while I was making coffee, when we'd go to the gym together and I'd have to force myself not to stare at him, I became an expert at hiding my feelings. I laughed at his jokes, listened to his stories about failed dates, gave him advice about women, all while my heart was breaking a little bit more each day. My best friend Maya, who knew the truth, kept telling me I needed to either tell Daniel or move out, but I couldn't do either. I was trapped between hope and fear, unable to move forward or let go. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Friday in mid-November. One of those days when autumn finally admits defeat and winter begins. The weather forecast had been warning about a major storm all week. A nor'easter that was supposed to bring heavy rain and strong winds to the Boston area. Daniel had been acting strange all week. He'd been quieter than usual, spending more time in his room. And I'd caught him staring at me a few times with this odd expression I couldn't quite read. I worried that maybe he'd figured out my feelings and was trying to figure out how to let me down gently or ask me to move out. That Friday, I was supposed to go to a gallery opening with some classmates from my architecture program, but the storm was so bad that the event got canceled. I came home early, soaked from the short walk from the tea station, to find Daniel in the kitchen making hot chocolate. "You're home early," he said, looking up in surprise. His hair was damp too, like he'd also just come in from the rain. "Gallery opening got canceled because of the storm," I explained, kicking off my wet shoes. "Where were you?" "Just out. Walking. Thinking." He poured hot chocolate into 2 mugs and handed one to me. Our fingers brushed again, just like they had that first day. I saw him pull back quickly. The lights flickered as thunder rumbled overhead. The storm was getting worse, wind rattling our old windows. "Looks like we're in for a rough night," I said, trying to fill the awkward silence that had settled between us. "Double quotes, Alex? Can we talk?" Daniel's voice was serious in a way I'd never heard before. My stomach dropped. This was it, he knew. He was going to ask me to move out. 3 years of friendship were about to end because I couldn't control my stupid feelings. "Sure," I managed to say. Following him to the living room, we sat on opposite ends of the couch, the storm raging outside. Daniel was holding his mug so tightly his knuckles were white. He opened his mouth to speak several times, but no words came out. "Daniel, whatever it is, just tell me," I said gently. "It's okay." He took a deep breath, set down his mug, and looked directly at me. "I've been lying to you. For 3 years I've been lying to you, and I can't do it anymore." I felt my heart stop. "What do you mean? All those stories about my ex-girlfriend? About women I was interested in? All those failed dates I told you about?" His voice was shaking. "They were all lies. Well, not all lies. I did date Emma in college, but that was before I really understood myself. Before I accepted who I really am." The room seemed to spin. "I don't understand. I'm gay, Alex." The words came out in a rush. "I'm gay, and I've known for years, but I was terrified to tell anyone, especially you. My family is so conservative. My dad literally said he'd disown any of his children if they turned out to be gay. I've been living in fear for so long, pretending to be someone I'm not." I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Daniel was gay. Daniel was gay and had been hiding it this whole time, just like I'd been hiding my feelings for him. "Why? Especially me?" I asked quietly. He laughed, a broken sound. "Because you're out and proud and comfortable with who you are. And I'm this coward who's been lying to everyone, including my best friend. Because I was afraid you'd think less of me for not being honest. Because I was afraid that once you knew the truth, I wouldn't be able to hide the other thing anymore." "What other thing?" Daniel stood up and walked to the window, his back to me. Lightning flashed, illuminating his silhouette. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "That I'm in love with you. That I've been in love with you since the day we met, when our hands touched, reaching for that apartment listing. That every day for 3 years has been torture.
Oh.
Watching you go on dates with other guys.
Oh.
Knowing I could never tell you how I felt because I was too afraid to even admit who I really am." The world stopped. The storm outside faded to nothing. All I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. "You're in love with me?" I repeated, standing up on shaky legs. He turned around, and I saw tears streaming down his face. "I know you probably don't feel the same way. I know I've ruined our friendship by telling you this, but I couldn't keep lying anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that you're just my roommate when you're the most important person in my life." I crossed the room in 3 steps. I didn't think about it, didn't plan it, just acted on an instinct 3 years in the making. I took his face in my hands and kissed him. For a moment he froze in surprise. Then he kissed me back, his arms wrapping around me, pulling me closer. It was like every movie kiss and better than every movie kiss all at once. It was gentle and desperate, sweet and intense. Everything I'd dreamed about for 3 years. When we finally broke apart, both of us were crying and laughing at the same time. "I'm in love with you too," I said, still holding his face in my hands. "I have been for 3 years. I thought you were straight." "I thought I'd never have a chance." "We're idiots," he said, laughing through his tears. "Complete idiots," I agreed. And then we were kissing again, making up for 3 years of lost time that night. As the storm raged outside, Daniel and I stayed up until dawn talking. We sat curled up together on the couch, finally able to touch each other the way we'd both secretly wanted to for years. He told me about growing up in a strict religious household in rural Pennsylvania, about realizing he was gay in high school and being terrified of what it meant. He told me about the depression he'd struggled with, the therapy he'd started a few months ago that had finally given him the courage to be honest about who he was. I told him about watching him from across the apartment, memorizing every detail of his face, about the nights I'd lie in bed, knowing he was just one room away and feeling like he might as well be on another planet, about the dates I'd gone on trying to get over him and how none of them ever stood a chance. "Maya knew, didn't she?" Daniel asked at one point. My best friend had met Daniel several times, and she'd always given me these knowing looks. She told me I needed to either confess or move out, I admitted. She said I was torturing myself. She was right, Daniel said softly. We were both torturing ourselves. As dawn broke, turning the sky pink and gold, the storm finally passed. We were exhausted, but neither of us wanted to sleep. This felt too precious, too fragile, like if we closed our eyes, it might all disappear. What happens now? I asked, tucked against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. I don't know, he admitted. I'm still terrified about what telling my family will mean. I'm still figuring out how to be openly gay in the world. But I know I don't want to hide anymore, especially not from you.
Oh.
We'll figure it out together, I promised. One step at a time. The first few weeks after that night were like living in a dream. We were cautious at first, both of us still processing the fact that our feelings were mutual. We went on our first official date to a small Italian restaurant in the North End. And I'll never forget the way Daniel looked at me across the table, like he couldn't quite believe I was real. We held hands walking home, and it felt revolutionary and completely natural at the same time. When we got back to our apartment, everything was the same and completely different. It was still our space, but now it was our space as a couple, not just as roommates. Daniel was nervous about physical intimacy at first. He'd only been with one person before, his college girlfriend, and that had been before he'd really accepted his sexuality. I was patient, letting him set the pace. When we finally made love for the first time, a few weeks after that stormy night, it was tender and emotional and absolutely perfect. But of course, life isn't a fairy tale, and we had challenges to face. The hardest part was Daniel's family. He'd been dreading telling them for years. And now that he was finally ready to be honest about who he was, the fear was overwhelming. He started having panic attacks whenever his mother would call, knowing he was lying to her every time they spoke. I was there for his first attempt to come out to his younger sister, Emma, on a video call. She was a sophomore at Penn State, and Daniel thought she might be more understanding than their parents. I held his hand off camera as he stumbled through the words, I need to tell you something. I'm gay, and I have a boyfriend. His name is Alex, and he's my roommate, and I love him. The silence on the other end felt endless. Then Emma's face broke into a huge smile. Oh, thank God, she said. I've been wondering when you were going to figure that out. I've known since you were like 15, Danny. You're literally the worst at hiding things. Daniel laughed and cried at the same time. You knew? Everyone knew, except you and Mom and Dad, she said gently. And honestly, I think Mom knows too. She's just waiting for you to tell her. Emma was supportive and wonderful, which gave Daniel courage. But telling his parents was a different story. He wanted to do it in person, so we planned a trip to Pennsylvania for Thanksgiving. I was nervous about meeting his family under these circumstances, but Daniel insisted he needed me there for support. The drive from Boston to his hometown took 6 hours, and Daniel was quiet for most of it, his anxiety palpable. His parents' house was a large colonial on a street where every house looked similar. They were waiting on the porch when we pulled up, and I could see immediately where Daniel got his looks from. His father was tall with the same dark curly hair, now graying at the temples, and his mother had those same hazel eyes. Daniel, his mother exclaimed, pulling him into a hug. And you must be Alex. We've heard so much about you. It's all good things, I hope, I said, shaking his father's hand. His grip was firm, his smile polite, but reserved. Dinner that first night was awkward. Daniel's parents asked about school, about our apartment, about our plans after graduation. They were friendly enough to me, but I could sense the underlying tension. Emma kept giving Daniel encouraging looks, silently urging him to just tell them. Daniel finally worked up the courage on Thanksgiving Day itself. We'd just finished dinner and the family was gathered in the living room. Emma squeezed my hand as Daniel stood up, his face pale but determined. Mom, Dad, I need to tell you something important. His mother set down her coffee cup. His father's expression became guarded. I'm gay, Daniel said, his voice stronger than I expected. I've known for a long time, and I'm sorry I haven't been honest with you. And Alex isn't just my roommate, he's my boyfriend. We've been together for a few months now, but I've loved him for much longer than that. The silence was deafening. I saw tears forming in Daniel's mother's eyes. His father's face had turned red. "This is unacceptable," his father said coldly. "You know how we feel about this? You know what the Bible says?" "I know what you think the Bible says," Daniel replied, his voice shaking but steady. "But I also know that God made me this way. I didn't choose this, Dad. I just chose to finally be honest about it." "Thomas," Daniel's mother said softly, touching her husband's arm. But he shook her off. "I won't have this in my house," he said, standing up. "If you choose this lifestyle, you choose to walk away from this family, Dad." Daniel started, but his father was already leaving the room. Daniel's mother was crying openly now. She stood up and approached Daniel, and for a moment I thought she might embrace him. Instead, she shook her head sadly. "I need time to process this," she said quietly. "This isn't what I wanted for you, Daniel." She left the room too, leaving Daniel, Emma, and me standing there in shocked silence. Emma immediately hugged her brother. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "That took so much courage." Daniel was trying not to cry. "I knew this would happen. I knew they'd react this way. Maybe they'll come around," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. "Maybe," Daniel said. "But even if they don't, I'm glad I told them." I'm done hiding. We left Pennsylvania the next morning, Daniel's parents barely speaking to us as we packed our bags. The drive back to Boston was quiet. But this time it was a different kind of quiet. Daniel seemed lighter somehow, despite the pain of his parents' rejection. "I know that was awful," he said as we crossed the Massachusetts border. "But I feel free for the first time in my life. Whatever happens with my parents, at least I'm being honest now." I reached over and took his hand. "I'm proud of you. Couldn't have done it without you," he said, bringing my hand to his lips and kissing it. "Thank you for being there." The months that followed were a mixture of joy and challenge. Daniel's relationship with his parents remained strained. His mother would call occasionally, awkward conversations where she asked about everything except his personal life. His father didn't call at all. It hurt Daniel deeply, but Emma was a constant source of support. Calling him regularly and visiting Boston during her winter break. Meanwhile, our relationship was flourishing. We fell into an easy rhythm of domesticity. Daniel would write in the mornings while I worked on architecture projects. We'd make lunch together, then head to our respective campuses for classes. Evenings were for cooking elaborate dinners, watching movies, and simply being together. We told our friends, of course. My friends had suspected something between us for years, and were thrilled when we finally got together. Daniel's creative writing cohort was overwhelmingly supportive. He even started writing honestly about his experiences in his work, which his professors praised for its emotional authenticity. Valentine's Day came, our first as an official couple. Daniel surprised me by writing a short story from my perspective, imagining what those 3 years of hidden feelings had been like for me. It was beautiful and heartbreaking, and so accurate it made me cry. I surprised him with an architectural rendering I'd created of our dream house. Incorporating all the details we'd talked about in late-night conversations, someday I promised, kissing him as he studied the drawing. "We'll build this together." Spring brought new challenges. Daniel's thesis committee wanted him to submit some of his recent work to literary journals, which meant his writing about being gay and in love would potentially be published under his real name. He agonized over the decision for weeks. "If I publish this, there's no going back," he told me one night as we lay in bed. "My whole extended family will know. Everyone from my hometown will know. It's only if they read literary journals," I pointed out. Which, let's be honest, they probably don't. He laughed. "True, but still. It feels like a big step." "It's your decision," I said gently. "Whatever you choose, I support you." In the end, he submitted his work. 2 months later, he got an acceptance from a prestigious journal. The day the issue was published, a story about coming out and falling in love prominently featured. He posted about it on social media for the first time. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Friends and acquaintances congratulated him. Some people from his hometown reached out with messages of support. His mother even called, her voice thick with emotion. "I read your story," she said. "It was beautiful, Daniel. I don't understand everything, but I can see how much you love him. It wasn't full acceptance, but it was a start. Our graduation came in May, a beautiful spring day with clear blue skies. My parents had flown in from California, and they'd invited Daniel to join us for all the celebrations. They'd always liked him, but they loved him even more once they knew how happy he made me. Daniel's mother came to his graduation, though his father stayed home. It was painful but not surprising. Emma was there too, cheering loudly when Daniel's name was called. I watched from the audience as he crossed the stage to receive his MFA diploma, feeling overwhelmed with pride and love. At the reception afterward, I introduced Daniel to extended family members who'd made the trip. "This is Daniel," I'd say, "my boyfriend." Each time I said it, I felt a surge of happiness. No more hiding. No more pretending. Just the truth. That evening, we had a small celebration at our apartment with close friends. Maya cornered me in the kitchen while I was getting more drinks. "You two are disgustingly happy," she said, grinning. "I'm glad you finally pulled your head out of your ass and told him how you felt." He told me first. Actually, I corrected her. Either way, you two are perfect together. She paused, then added, "So what's next? Are you staying in Boston?" That was the question we'd been avoiding. I had a job offer from an architecture firm in Boston, but Daniel had been offered a teaching position at a small college in Vermont. We'd been trying to figure out what to do for weeks. That night, after everyone had left and we were cleaning up, Daniel brought it up. "We need to make a decision," he said. "About next year. About where we're going to be." I set down the glass I was washing. "I know. What do you want to do?" he asked. I turned to face him fully. "I want to be wherever you are. If you want to take the teaching job in Vermont, I'll find work there. If you want to stay in Boston, we'll stay. I don't care where we live as long as we're together." He smiled. That beautiful smile that still made my heart race. "Vermont has lower rent and mountains, and maybe a slower pace would be good for us." "Vermont it is, then," I said decisively. He pulled me close, resting his forehead against mine. "Are you sure? That architecture firm in Boston is such a good opportunity." "There will be other opportunities," I said. "Besides, Vermont needs architects too. Maybe I'll even start my own firm eventually. Design sustainable mountain homes or something." "That sounds perfect," he murmured, and kissed me softly. We moved to Vermont in August, to a small town near the college where Daniel would be teaching. We found a beautiful apartment in a converted barn, with exposed wooden beams and huge windows that looked out over rolling hills. It was different from Boston, quieter and slower, but it felt right. I found work with a local architecture firm that specialized in eco-friendly design, exactly the kind of work I'd always wanted to do. Daniel threw himself into teaching, coming home each day excited to tell me about his students and their work. We adopted a dog, golden retriever we named Scout. We hiked mountain trails on weekends. We hosted dinner parties for Daniel's colleagues and my coworkers. We built a life together, the kind of life I'd dreamed about during those 3 years of hiding my feelings. 2 years after we graduated, Daniel got a phone call that changed everything. His father had had a heart attack. He was in the hospital, stable but serious. The drive to Pennsylvania was tense. Daniel hadn't spoken to his father since that Thanksgiving, though his relationship with his mother had slowly improved. She'd even visited us in Vermont once, awkward but trying. When we arrived at the hospital, Daniel's mother was in the waiting room with Emma. She hugged Daniel tightly. Then, to my surprise, hugged me too. "He's asking for you," she told Daniel quietly. "Both of you." Daniel's father looked smaller in the hospital bed, older than I remembered. His face was pale, monitors beeping softly beside him. When we entered, his eyes found Daniel immediately. "Son," he said, his voice weak. Daniel approached cautiously, and I hung back near the door, unsure if I should be there. "I'm sorry," his father said, tears running down his face. "I've been so stupid. So stubborn. I thought I was following God's will, but I was just following my own fear and prejudice." Daniel was crying too. "Dad, let me finish," his father interrupted. Lying here, thinking I might die, all I could think about was how I wasted 2 years. 2 years I could have spent knowing my son, really knowing him, instead of pushing him away. Your mother showed me your stories, the ones you published. You're so talented, Daniel, and so brave. Braver than I've ever been. He looked past Daniel to me. Alex, I'm sorry for how I treated you. My son loves you, and that should have been enough for me from the beginning. I moved closer, standing beside Daniel. Thank you, sir. Please, he said. Call me Thomas. Daniel's father recovered, and true to his word, he made an effort. It wasn't perfect overnight. He still sometimes said things that revealed his old prejudices, but he was trying. He asked about our lives, looked at photos of our apartment and Scout, even laughed at some of our stories. That Christmas, both of Daniel's parents came to visit us in Vermont. It was the first time his father had seen where we lived, how we'd built our life together. I watched him take it all in. The photos of us on the walls, the shared calendar in the kitchen, the way we moved around each other with easy familiarity. On Christmas Eve, after his mother and Emma had gone to bed, Thomas asked to speak with us. We sat by the fireplace, mugs of hot cider in our hands, and he looked at both of us seriously. I want you to know, he said slowly, that I'm proud of you, Daniel. Proud of the man you've become. Proud of the life you've built. And I'm grateful that you found Alex. I can see how much you love each other. Daniel was speechless, tears streaming down his face. I squeezed his hand. Thank you, Dad, he finally managed to say. That means everything to me. 3 years after that stormy November night, I decided it was time. I'd been planning for months, working with a jewelry designer to create the perfect ring. I wanted it to be special, to honor our journey and our love. I chose a Saturday in November, almost exactly 6 years after the day we'd first met at that housing fair. I told Daniel we were going hiking, one of his favorite activities. We drove to a trail we'd discovered our first autumn in Vermont, one that led to a lookout point with stunning views of the valley below. It was a perfect fall day. The trees ablaze with color, the air crisp and clean. We hiked in comfortable silence, holding hands when the trail allowed it, pointing out interesting birds or particularly beautiful leaves. When we reached the lookout point, I suggested we rest for a while. We sat on a large flat rock, Scout lying at our feet looking out over the valley. It's beautiful, Daniel said softly. I never get tired of this view. Neither do I agreed. But there's something even more beautiful I've been looking at for 6 years. He turned to look at me, confused. I slid off the rock and knelt on one knee. His eyes went wide. Daniel, I began, my voice shaking with emotion, 6 years ago. We both reached for the same apartment listing, and our hands touched. In that moment, my whole world changed, though I didn't fully understand it yet. For 3 years, I loved you in secret, thinking I'd never have a chance. And then one stormy night, you were brave enough to tell me the truth, and everything changed again. I pulled out the ring box, opening it to reveal a simple platinum band with both our birthstones inlaid in a subtle pattern. You've made me happier than I ever thought possible. You've shown me what real love looks like, what courage looks like. You've built a life with me that exceeds every dream I ever had. So I'm asking you, in this place that we love, will you marry me? Daniel was crying and laughing at the same time, just like he had that first night. Yes, he said, pulling me to my feet and into his arms. Yes, absolutely yes. I slipped the ring onto his finger, and we kissed there on the mountaintop, Scout barking excitedly around us. We got married the following summer in a small ceremony in Vermont. Both our families were there, including Daniel's father, who'd continued to work on accepting us. Emma was Daniel's best person, and Maya was mine. We wrote our own vows, promising to always be honest with each other, to face challenges together, and to never again hide our love. As I stood at the altar, watching Daniel walk toward me with tears of joy in his eyes, I thought about that scared young man who'd hidden his feelings for 3 years. I thought about the terrified young man who'd grown up believing he could never be himself. And I thought about the gift of honesty, of courage, of that one stormy night when everything changed. Today, Daniel and I have been together for 9 years, married for 3. We still live in Vermont, though we've bought a house now. beautiful old farmhouse that I've spent years renovating using all the skills I learned in architecture school. It looks remarkably like that rendering I made for Valentine's Day all those years ago. Daniel published his first novel last year, a beautiful coming-of-age story about a young gay man finding himself. It was dedicated to me, for Alex, who taught me that love is worth the risk of honesty. I started my own architecture firm, specializing in sustainable design. My first major project is almost complete, a community center for LGBTQ youth, providing a safe space for kids who are going through what Daniel went through. Daniel's relationship with his parents continues to improve. They visit several times a year now, and his father has even started volunteering at the community center. Wanting to help other families avoid the mistakes he made, we talk to young people sometimes. At the community center, or at colleges where Daniel does readings, they ask us how we knew we were in love, how we found the courage to be honest, how we built a life together. And we always tell them the same thing. Love requires courage, but it's worth it. Being honest about who you are and what you feel is terrifying, but hiding is worse. The risk of rejection is real. But so is the possibility of finding someone who loves you exactly as you are. Sometimes I still think about those 3 years of hiding. I feel sad for the time we lost. But then Daniel will look at me across our kitchen table, or reach for my hand while we're watching a movie, or leave me one of his terrible pun sticky notes, and I remember that we found our way to each other in the end. That stormy November night changed both our lives. It was the night we stopped hiding and started living. It was the night fear gave way to courage, and secrets gave way to truth. It was the night we learned that the thing we'd been most afraid of, being honest about our feelings, was actually the key to everything we'd ever wanted. They say that love conquers all. But I think that's not quite right. Love doesn't conquer. Love invites. Love opens doors. Love creates space for two people to be fully themselves, together. And that's what Daniel and I have built. A life where we can be completely, honestly, joyfully ourselves. Where the only secret we keep is what we're planning for each other's birthdays. Where love isn't something we hide, but something we celebrate every single day. 6 years ago, I was hiding something from my roommate. Then one stormy night, everything changed. And I've never been more grateful for a storm in my entire life.